Mile High, hello everybody in Broncos country, and welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as always, is your Denver Broncos insider, Mile High Hudders senior NFL draft analyst, and one of my good friends and colleagues, Erick Trickel. Erick, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm not good. Not much is going on. Glad that everything's all getting back to normal for me after my vacation. Just excited to go and spend some time with my family. Going to go see Joker here in a little bit, and I've heard nothing but awesome things about that movie.
Yeah, I've really wanted to go see Joker. I just haven't had a chance to actually go. My boss said that it was really good, but I also heard that there was some people that were pretty disappointed in just the overall aspect of like how it wasn't a lifelong switch from him becoming like to him becoming the Joker. It's like here's a week in his life, and now all of a sudden Joaquin Phoenix is the Joker. But I don't know.
It's very interesting because what the Joker suffers from in the movie is, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's something Bosber syndrome or something like that. Where when he starts to cry, he'll start to laugh, or when he starts to laugh, he'll start to cry. And I actually met a guy just a few weeks ago who has that actual syndrome, and it is just very weird, just sitting there watching him, and he'll be talking on normally, and he'll make a joke, and then he just starts crying. So it made me a little bit uncomfortable at first, but getting to know him and everything like that, he's a really awesome guy. It just sucks he got smacked on the head really hard with a hammer at the state fair actually a few years ago. So it's actually interesting, and then to come to find out that this movie that's what the Joker is going through. That's one reason why I'm so excited to go see this movie.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, today on Dove Valley Deep Divers, we're going to kind of build on the discussion that we had from last week where we talked about the impending free agents for the Denver Broncos. We're going to kind of push that talk a little bit forward and how the Broncos need to go about building this roster. And in doing this today, we're going to have the very first ever guest for the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast by bringing on our colleague Nick Kendall. Nick, what's going on, man? How are you over in Iowa?
Doing pretty well. We just got hit with that massive cold front that went through, so it feels like it's November here and blustery, but can't complain too much, and counting down the days till I'll be trekking across Iowa and Nebraska and working my way to Colorado for a couple weeks. So doing well and just, trying to live in the moment right now. The heart of football season, everything going on, it's got to stay present.
Yeah. We've been talking with each other, over the past over about a year or so, something like that, in a private group chat, and I don't think I've actually ever told you this, so I just want to wish you and your beautiful fiance my deepest congratulations for getting married here in the next couple days. So, but anyways, guys,
Nick, there's still time. You can get out of this. There's still time.
I thought you were going to say my deepest condolences to her.
I mean, you know what? It is actually your funeral, so
yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
but anyways,
a big party either way.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, marriage. Unfortunately, I have not taken the leap yet, but my deepest condolences to your wife, and my most sincere congratulations to you guys as well. But guys, enough with the small talk. Let's get started on this.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Basketball, football, baseball, hockey, and more. October is the only month of the year that all four major sports are going on at the same time. So what better time to get into the game than now? Head over to mybookie.ag. You go to mybookie.ag, you can find out what the odds are, what the spread is for the Broncos-Colts game coming up in Week 8, and that just scratches the surface. We have teamed up with MyBookie this October to give you this great offer. Sign up at mybookie.ag and use promo code OVERTIME, and they will match your first deposit. Again, promo code OVERTIME, and new users get their first deposit doubled. mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid. Today's episode is brought to you by CBS Sports HQ, the brand new streaming sports news network. It's live 24/7 and costs you nothing. That's right. It's sports coverage that's always on, and it's always free. Always. CBS Sports HQ, whether you're a fantasy player or just want to follow the latest updates on your team in the NFL, allows you to do that in real time, and it's free. Their coverage is always focused on the game at CBS Sports HQ. Tons of highlights, breaking news as it happens, fantasy advice, and something we care deeply about here, gambling picks, and analysis to get that extra edge. I know when I turn on CBS Sports HQ, I'll see the tips. I'll see the trends I need to win my bets. And don't forget, you can get access to all this great coverage completely free. I don't mean free for a week or a month, or if you have some special cable package. It's totally, completely free for everybody. You don't even need a login. Just download the CBS Sports app on your phone, Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, or other connected devices at any time to watch CBS Sports HQ. No fake debates, just sports for real sports fans at the great price of completely free. You don't even have to log in or sign up for anything. You guys, download the CBS Sports app and watch CBS Sports HQ today.
All right, guys, the topic we're going to kind of talk about today is how the Broncos need to go about building this roster. And in the first part of this conversation, we're going to talk about whether the Broncos need to spend in free agency on the defensive side of the football, or if we need to go into the draft, spend on defense and then go into the draft to fix the offense. So, Eric, I'm going to let you start it off here. What's kind of your biggest idea behind how to fix this Broncos roster?
See, when I look at it, is you got to try and figure out what other holes that they have. And the Broncos, they actually have a good starting base for a young offense. I mean, obviously they need Drew Lock to hit, but Cortland Sutton's coming around. You have Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay looking good. Noah Fant, he seems to be improving each week. Dalton Reisner there on the offensive line. They have some good young pieces, and it's just trying to figure out how do they want to go and continue to build around them. And it's definitely an interesting topic that both Nick and I, we've talked about it a little bit, both privately and on Twitter, about how Denver should go about it, because offensively they have these young talents, but defensively not so much. So do you want to go and get these young guys on defense in the draft and just work on building them up, or do you want to go spend on defensive free agents, bring them in, continue to build the defense young, and not necessarily try to get back to being competitive sooner, but just trying to just more so build the team in a more well-rounded way? So what's the best option there? And when I'm looking at that is you got to look at all the holes, and you got to look at where's going to be strong in the draft and where's going to be strong in free agency. Of course, there's so many things that can change between now and then, of course, that we've got to factor into this as well. But when I look at this, I look at the defensive free agent group, and I wouldn't say that it's a great group at each position, but there are some groups that are positions that are looking very strong that you can go and spend some decent money on. I mean, you have Chris Jones on the defensive line. There's a couple other big-time defensive linemen that you can go look at bringing in. A couple good corners that you can look at bringing in, and just a few guys everywhere. Whereas in the draft, or on the offensive side of the ball, it's not so much. It's a little bit looking weaker, but the offensive side of the ball in the draft is looking very strong. Wide receiver is so talented, so top-heavy, and has good depth. Running backs really deep as well. The offensive line class, both at tackle and interior offensive line, is looking fantastic right now. Tight end's looking really good. Even the quarterback class is looking really good. So you can sit here and you can actually go and invest and get decent talent throughout the draft on offense. And then, as I'm saying, is you can sit there and turn around and go get what pieces you need on the defense, spend there, and then just work on building your defense over the next couple of years once you have that offense in place.
Okay, Nick, what do you think?
I definitely agree with him. I think obviously it depends on the individual player, but I'm very much in the mind, that you got to keep building this offense, and really, it's redundant at this point, but it comes down to the quarterback, and you can look across the league. Obviously it still comes down to that individual quarterback. You can give them every benefit in the world. It still comes down to them putting in the work, developing along the way. But scheme, so that coaching staff and offensive line. So I think it's really important to just keep hammering away on that offense. Obviously, if the offensive board doesn't match up there, like in the draft, so to speak, then you got to take the best guy there. But I would be looking to get long-term pieces on the offensive side of the ball and getting more short-term fixes on the defense. I also think you have a better selling point there for the defense to bring guys in. So you obviously have Fangio, Von Miller still here, Bradley Chubb. There's still a little bit of an aura of a defensive legacy there from that 2015 defense. So I think you're going to have a much easier time luring in higher caliber free agents for market deals. Not discounts, but market deals on the defensive side of the ball as opposed to the offensive side. And looking at the upcoming draft also, I think that it's a good cornerback class, but I would say it's one of the more heavy offensive classes that we've seen in a while. So I'm okay kind of lollygagging it, so to speak, in free agency as far as the offensive comes, but then hammering it away in the draft. So, guys like Byron Jones could be available. Obviously, there's going to be a number of the free agents. Calais Campbell could be a guy that's cut. Jimmy Smith is a guy that could be cut. Prince Amukamara. So I don't know. That's my philosophy right now. I think you can kind of get a quicker fix on the offense, especially with Fangio, Donatel, and you still have some good pieces there. I know they're not young pieces, but like Kareem Jackson, sounds like they're working on a deal for Justin Simmons. Maybe they have something there with A.J. Johnson and obviously Bradley Chubb coming back and Von Miller. You need some help at linebacker, cornerback, and defensive tackle. But I think that's probably easier to find on the market than, say, an offensive tackle that can replace Garrett Bowles. But in the end, it comes down to the individual player. So if, like, both Andrew Thomas and Tristan Wirfs are gone, the Broncos are picking, let's say, 10, and Jeffrey Okuda's there, run to the board. Run to the podium, so to speak.
Yeah, and that absolutely makes sense, and that was something that I kind of wanted to talk about just kind of briefly here was, the free agent offensive line group right now just does not look very good. We talked about it a couple weeks ago on Dove Valley Deep Divers, especially specifically to the left tackle position, trying to find a veteran that could be able to replace Garrett Bowles with the struggles that he has had. Not necessarily over the last couple of weeks. He has looked very good in time after we recorded that podcast. It was almost like he listened to it, more or less, like listened to the advice that we were saying, like this is what he needs to do better. But anyways, you got like Anthony Costanzo, a bunch of aging veterans, not a whole lot to work with there. But I'm going to go back to the right guard position right now because the situation with Ronald Leary, that team option probably not going to get picked up. He's at I think it's like $9 million cap hit next year with all the injuries and everything that he has had over the course of his career. He's probably going to be shipped out the door. So looking at the right guard, you have the one big guy right now, and he's probably not going to be let go by the Washington Redskins. You have Brandon Scherf, the right guard, and is one of the best right guards in all of football. And then you also have from the Indianapolis Colts, and this is a guy that you might actually be able to go out and pick up. The Colts do have a ton of money to spend in free agency in Joe Haig. So the right guard, if you're going to try to find a right guard, then maybe you have the opportunity. Evan Boehm also available, but if you're going to try to find a right guard, it's probably better to do so in the free agency period. If you're trying to find that offensive tackle, I think it has to be in the first round. And hopefully, Andrew Thomas, Tristan Wirfs are still available, but there's a couple players there towards the second round. I'm not exactly sure out of all of them, but you have to invest in the left tackle position in the draft. So now, going to the wide receiver position, probably one of the strongest positions in the draft. So if you're going to invest any talent at the wide receiver position, you could also make that argument for, say, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, someone like that in the first round, Jalen Reagor in the second round. So I think it was it Erick that did a mock draft a couple weeks ago on the Draft Network that had I think it was Tristan Wirfs and Jalen Reagor 1-2 combination, or was that Nick?
That was Erick. I've had ones on Twitter where that'd be an ideal situation. I actually just did one over at Mile High Report where they asked me to come on and do a dueling mock draft. And I actually took Tristan Wirfs round 1. And then Jalen Reagor was on the board. I didn't go that way. I actually went Sean Wade from Ohio State just because I thought he was too good to pass up there. And I thought that...
Yeah, my boy.
I know. He's
the
such a good fit.
The cornerback, yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know if you can call him a cornerback. He's kind of a do-everything. He kind of plays that safety slot hybrid role right now. They're not asking him to do too much boundary, but I think he has the skills to do it. Dane Brugler compared him to Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I think it's a pretty apt comparison with his size, physicality, and versatility. But I liked some of the depth at wide receiver in this class. I think you can kind of get, especially with Cortland Sutton emerging as well, you can kind of get a niche speed player that can do some slot or Z later on, and just Wade was too good of a scheme fit and a talent to pass up. I think if he does come out this year, I think he'll probably be a first-round pick. But if he doesn't come out, I think that's a guy trending towards a top 10 pick in 2021.
Wow, that's actually some pretty high praise right there. You guys are the real big draft guys. I do a lot of draft stuff after the regular season's over. That's when I really get into everything like that, doing the big mock draft that I've done over the last couple of years where I go to try to find like a fan consensus. That's where I get the best idea about all the players. And this year I'm really going to try to break out and do a lot more film study, and hopefully that's going to open up here directly in the next 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. I've got Erick helping me out with getting me a list of guys to really look at. So I'll trust your guys' judgment as far as that goes. But in your extended evaluation, Sean Wade, that's pretty high praise. But, guys, we're going to have to take a quick break really fast. And on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about how the Broncos can build the offense through the free agency period and build the defense through the 2020 NFL Draft. But before we go, I just want to remind you all to head on over to milehighhuddle.com to check out all of our written content on your Denver Broncos. At the Huddle website, you'll get breaking news, analysis, and opinion articles, as well as in-depth film breakdowns of not only the Broncos players, but matchups to watch in an upcoming game, or even our top-notch NFL Draft coverage. Also, make sure you take a couple of minutes to create your own personalized profile and hit up the comment section to voice your opinions on any topics that you agree or disagree with. It's completely free and easy to use, and we all love to discuss Broncos football with our readers. You can also sit in with us during the live game thread to talk about your thoughts on how the team is performing as well. So with that, we got to step away right quick. Sit tight.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
You guys, the holidays are approaching, and you may be thinking about how you're going to save some extra coins, some extra dollars. Well, we've got a way that maybe you haven't thought of. You can consolidate your high-interest credit card balances to a lower rate and save with Lightstream. You can get a rate as low as 5.95% APR with AutoPay, which is much lower than the national average interest rate of over 20% APR. There are no fees, and you can even get your money as soon as the day that you apply. Just for our listeners, apply now and get a special interest rate discount. The only way to get this discount is to go to lightstream.com/huddleup. lightstream.com/huddleup. Subject to credit approval. Rate includes 0.50% AutoPay discount. Terms and conditions apply. And offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com/huddleup for more information. Man, last week's loss on Thursday night was tough, but the Denver Broncos are going to get the chance to redeem themselves this week, going on the road to Lucas Oil Stadium to take on the Indianapolis Colts. Make sure you have your seat in that game ready to go with Vivid Seats. Vivid Seats is the top source for tickets for the events you want to go to. You can sort by price, or you can look for seats in the section and row of your choice, all in the Vivid Seats app. To make things even better, you guys, Vivid Seats now has a loyalty program that allows fans to earn credit back, the Vivid Seats Rewards. Go to the App Store or Google Play and download the Vivid Seats app. Fans are automatically enrolled in the Vivid Seats Rewards loyalty program. Every purchase is backed by a 100% buyer guarantee. From the biggest concerts and games to the hottest theater shows and more, Vivid Seats has it all. It's not just Denver Broncos seats. Download the app and join the Vivid Seats Rewards loyalty program today. And you guys, when it's time to buy, new users, you have to enter the promo code OVERTIME at checkout to receive a discount of up to $100, and it also lets you know that we sent you at the Huddle Up Podcast.
Welcome back to Dove Valley Deep Divers, guys. We just got done talking about how the Broncos need to kind of spend a little bit of money on the offensive side of the football, as far as like it really kind of just depends on the players that are available, but spending money at like the right guard position, going towards the draft at the wide receiver position, stuff like that. But now let's flip the script a little bit. And what about, drafting towards the defense to fix the defense and spending money on the big guys at the wide receiver position? So Nick, we're going to let you start off this time. Go ahead.
I think that this draft really comes down to, it depends on obviously how high the Broncos are picking, but if they have a chance to get Chase Young in the draft, I think that's where it comes down. The first team that doesn't need a quarterback, the guy you probably need to take is Chase Young. He's that good of a player, 6'5", 265. I mean, his versatility, his bend, his burst. I mean, he really is a Myles Garrett level prospect. And I know the Broncos have Von Miller. I know they have Bradley Chubb. But over the duration of Chase Young's contract, folks, Von Miller's probably going to be gone. I mean, that's a 5-year contract, 6 years if you're counting on him being that good, putting that franchise tag on if that comes down to that. So really, I guess the first thing I would ask is, let's say you're picking 3 overall, Dolphins picking 1, and they take Tua, Bengals 2, they take Herbert. You're sitting on the board at 3. You have to at least consider Chase Young at that point, right?
Of course you have to consider him. He's just that good of a pass rusher. He's so versatile in scheme and what he can bring to the defense. You have to consider him. And as you said, is Von Miller, his contract's running up. You're going to have at least 5 years, provided you pick up the franchise or the 5th-year option with Young. And you're going to have 3 more years of Chubb. So you have that overlap, that 2-year thing where you can just sit there and you can pay Chubb and work out his big cap hits in those 2 years, and then get Chase Young back and kind of have him getting those big contract years when Bradley Chubb's not as high, because, as I said, you want his big cap hits in those last 2 years of Young's deal. So, yeah, you obviously have to consider him. And my thing is, when I'm looking at this is, and this specifically, spending on offense and drafting on defense is, with how the young talent that the Broncos have on offense already, I would like to see them go and not necessarily spend big on multiple guys, but spend and go get that like one piece that they really need on offense, that one veteran presence that they could really use, and just continue to and just basically surround their young guys with veterans that know how to handle themselves and potentially bring in a leader, because this is a team that is a little bit leaderless. But at the same time is the draft for the defense. There's a lot of positions that aren't that strong. So if you're needing a defensive lineman, you need to take one early because it's kind of pathetic later on.
I do like the depth of the nose tackle class.
Nose tackle's great,
yeah,
which Denver definitely needs. But if you're looking for an edge for a 3-4 defensive end,
yeah,
there's not many options there. If you're looking at linebacker, you better do your homework, because a lot of these guys don't look like they're going to be something in the NFL outside of being a special teams player. When you're looking at corner, that's one position that, okay, yeah, I can avoid spending on corner because corner is such a strong group. I've looked at maybe like 30 different people's top 5, top 10 boards at corner, and none of them have looked even close to the same. There's so many guys that you can have as your number 1 guy or your number 3 or so on and so forth. So I'm fine going either way. Of course, to me, the best way for me to do it, or my opinion for them to do it, would be you stay balanced. You go get some young pieces on defense that are there when you want to take them. You go get some young pieces on offense. You spend on both sides of the ball, and you just try to build this team in a balanced route. Obviously, that to me is just the best thing. But it's just, I'm looking at this team and how young they are offensively, and I want to go and make sure that there are these veteran guys that can still help these young guys who are still developing. Like Cortland Sutton, even though he has taken a huge step this year, he's still going to be developing next year. Phillip Lindsay's still going to be developing. So you want these pieces around them that can help them still. So that's why I'm looking at it this way. That's the way I'm looking at it, is just basically stay balanced, but going this way is, I kind of like the idea of drafting defense and trying to get that defense going, because you're going to have a young quarterback and you've got to build that nest for him on offense, but you got to have that defense there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Lance.
Yeah, and with the wide receiver position, if you're going to bring in a free agent wide receiver, why not take another look at Emmanuel Sanders as well? I mean, I understand 33 years old, and with the injury history that he had, the torn Achilles, he has looked really good, obviously, this year, but he wants to win. He wants to get on his way out. And you look, the wide receiver class in free agency this year is actually really good. A.J. Green, yes, he has some injury issues as well. You've got Amari Cooper probably going to be re-signed by the Cowboys. Brashad Perriman, who hasn't actually got a chance to really show out. But there's some guys here, Ted Ginn, Willie Snead, like, You can actually go out and get a veteran kind of a player that's going to be a complementary player for the guys like Cortland Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton. And if the Broncos do want to take a wide receiver, it is such a deep class at the wide receiver position that they can wait, and go get one in like the 4th or 5th round if that's what they so choose. So I do really understand the want and the need. And if you're really going to go with a defensive player, I think that it has to be at the cornerback position, because with Chris Harris Jr. likely on his way out, Isaac Yiadom hasn't exactly gotten his chance, and he's looked up and down at times. He's gotten a lot of struggles this year. Devontae Bosby, before he got hurt, he looked like he was actually going to be turning a corner and turning into a pretty significant player for this team, but there's no depth on this roster right now. So if you're going to, and as Nick kind of alluded to earlier, the cornerback class, there's a lot of guys that could be cut and released as cap casualties, and a lot of good veterans that are going to be out on the roster, but build this young nucleus on the defensive side of the football as well. You can't just bring in aging veterans on the defensive side of the ball and expect them to have any kind of real good continuity as far as long-term success. Let Vic Fangio get his hands on the defense in the draft and get the players that he wants to build a long-term successful unit with.
Basically, what this part is spending on offense and drafting defense, or drafting defense or spending on defense and veteran defense and drafting offenses, do you want to go the Oakland Raiders route with their first year under Gruden, where they went and they basically tried to fix their offense to the draft? I mean, they went and signed some big vets there as well, but they mainly spent on their defense and kind of ignored their defense. And then this year they focused on getting younger on defense and signed some key vets on offense. Of course, Helmet Gate had a big old thing there where after trading for him and all that stuff like that. But that's one thing that you got to consider, is that the route you want to go? Like it's different for every team, and it's going to be different for everybody. So it's just, what do you think is best?
Well, it comes down to the board. I really do think that if the Broncos are picking high right now, I'm leaning into offensive tackle, but that has as much to do with what I think of Tristan Wirfs and Andrew Thomas and just solidifying this offensive line for Drew Lock. But if they go out there and say, sign a Brandon Scherf, that changes things. So obviously a lot needs to play out between now and then, but I do think there are some options that they can look at cornerback. I mean, obviously I already mentioned Jimmy Smith. He's older, but he's, he could play that boundary position here. Maybe he wants to come back home to Colorado. Logan Ryan's going to be a free agent. We're going to see him this week. Obviously you got some guys like Darqueze Dennard, Eli Apple, Jason Verrett, Eric Rowe, kind of some of these younger guys who haven't really hit yet, but we know that Fangio in the past has taken other people's high draft assets that haven't worked out and then worked them out. So that's an interesting way to look at it as well. I mean, hell, Bradley Roby and Aqib Talib are going to be free agents. So that's something I would definitely be interested in. Obviously, this team cannot function defensively if your cornerback trio is Callahan, Bosby, and Yadam, based on what we've seen and what we, I guess, haven't seen as far as Callahan goes. So that's something that really does concern me. But still, this is a team with a lot of holes. You can look at that as an optimist and be like, that means we can go a number of different directions. We could focus on a lot of different good players, or you could look at it as, wow, we have a long way to go. So I don't think you need to be too picky in that regard. Take talent in that regard, and that especially comes down to the draft. I mean, fill your holes as best as you can in free agency. That way you can afford yourself the opportunity to not be hamstrung to go position X in the draft, because that's when you end up taking a Paxton Lynch. That's when you end up taking a Garrett Bowles round one. And those guys, when you feel pressed to take one singular position, that's when you're in trouble. So long way to go yet. Hopefully also over the course of the season, we'll see some more guys stand up and stand out, but who knows? I mean, you like to tell God your plans and he'll laugh at you. Famous Woody Allen quote.
And with this year, something else that just actually occurred to me while listening to you talk, Nick, is that there's one big variable that not many people are talking about, and that's going to be the new CBA.
Absolutely.
So how's that going to play a role? Because was that going to change rookie contracts around some? How's that going to play for compensatory pick formula going forward? Basically, there's so many changes that can come with that, and it's going to be interesting to see how teams go and operate this offseason with that in mind if they don't have a CBA done by then, because there's so many changes that could potentially be coming. I've heard quite a few rumors. I've seen some very credible reporters out there who have talked about certain things about it, and there could be a lot of changes to it. And one big one is a big change coming to the compensatory pick formula. So we'll see what happens with that. And there's just so many variables, as Nick said, that there's so many things in play that can change things that we haven't seen yet. And that's just one big one that I think is worth mentioning.
Right, and another thing to really kind of take into consideration is just the capital that the Broncos currently have as a whole for this team. Sitting right now, looking at overthecap.com and the salary cap space that the Denver Broncos have for the 2020 season, we're talking over $67 million in cap space, and that could jump significantly depending on what they do. They already restructured Joe Flacco's contract a little bit, kind of open up some money there a little bit as well, and then with the Ron Leary situation, you're talking saving $9.375 million on the cap next year, or excuse me, you're gonna save $6 million on the cap as well. So the Broncos could push this up towards the $80 million mark, and they also have a lot of draft capital right now with the recent trades that they've made. They have a potential if they do get all the compensatory picks, like Eric said, there could be a change coming with that. But if the Broncos do get all the compensatory selections that they could have potentially gotten this year, we're looking at 11 draft picks as well. So you're going to see a lot of both on this. The Broncos are probably going to be big spenders in free agency this year and get some guys, and they might double down on a couple of these positions. They might try to go out and get, like a Joe Haig or a Brandon Scherf, Evan Boehm, somebody like that to play the right guard position. Obviously, keep Connor McGovern on the roster as well, and then go into the draft and pick an interior offensive lineman on day 2 or day 3. There's also the possibility they could go out and sign a guy like Prince Amukamara and then draft a cornerback high in the first round and really build up the cornerback depth. Just bang bang on both sides of the coin. So there is a lot of variables that have to be taken into consideration with this, and I think that it's going to be a little bit of both on both sides. They're going to spend a little bit on the offensive side, they're going to spend a little bit on the defensive side, and they're going to draft. Obviously, they're going to draft offense and defense. They're not just going to focus specifically on the offense and defense, or the offense or the defense. But There's just so much to take a look at with this. The players that are going to be coming available, how do they fit with the scheme? Obviously, looking at the board, the guys that they can convince to come off the street in free agency. So I don't know, guys. There's no really one true correct answer to this question.
No, there is one right way.
Go ahead.
My way.
I knew he was going to say that. I would say defensive line, cornerback, and offensive line would probably be the 3 areas I would highlight. But it comes down to the specific player. When you kind of get down to some more tertiary needs, you're going to have a wide receiver to replace Sanders. It doesn't need to be a number 1, I don't think, with Sutton emerging. But is Winfrey the guy? Is Patrick the guy? Is Hamilton the guy? Maybe, but can't say that. You need a secondary tight end, a wide tight end preferably, that can really handle the inline responsibilities to free up Fant. You need a developmental quarterback. You could use, some... Obviously, linebacker could use some help, maybe even safety if Will Parks leaves. So there's, like I said, a lot of holes, but that means there's a lot of directions they could go. So it's just about getting good players and guys that not only fit the scheme, but also kind of can build up a team that's had some locker room issues over the past 3 seasons.
Yeah, just to build on that point is the Broncos have a hole at every single spot of the roster right now, and it's just going to get worse after the season, depending on who they bring back in free agency or not. You're projected to lose Chris Harris, Emmanuel Sanders, Derek Wolfe, Shelby Harris, Adam Gotsis, Justin Simmons, Will Parks, Devontae Booker, and just so many other guys that are set to be free agents after this year. And losing even just a couple of those guys, if you lose Chris Harris, you definitely need a corner. Even with him, you need corner help. Emmanuel Sanders, with him, you still need that one dynamic receiver that Denver doesn't really have.
A speed
but
threat.
Without him, you definitely need it even more. Justin Simmons, you lose him, you need that deep safety. And word is that they will be looking at bringing him back. But until they do, there's that whole issue. Then on the offensive line, can you trust Garrett Bowles going forward? We have seen improvement from him, but will he continue? And will he build on that? Will Dalton Reisner continue? Everybody believes he will. I believe he will. I've watching the tape and everything like that. He's definitely showing that potential, but we still need to see him continue to improve and get more consistent. Connor McGovern, is he going to be brought back? Where is he going to play? Ron Leary, he's struggling this year. 6 holding penalties against him this year so far in just the first 5 games. So what's going to happen there? There's a team option. I doubt they pick it up. Jawan James and his injury issues. Elijah Wilkinson stepping in, and he's struggling really bad there at right tackle. So you have that hole there. Tight end, it's so banged up, it's hard to really gauge just how much of a need they have there. Austin Fort, he was supposed to have a big role, but he got hurt. Or looking like he'd have a big role, but he got hurt. Jake Butt can't stay healthy. Then you have Andrew Beck, who's been playing well. And then just it can go on and on and on. So definitely with a lot of these positions, focusing on the defensive line just for the example is they need help there. But is DeMarcus Walker or Draymond Jones continue to build themselves up to where Denver can just say, okay, sayonara to Wolf, Shelby Harris, and Gotsis, and have those two and just go fill out with a nose tackle and some depth? Will Mike Purcell really step up and solidify himself as the nose tackle going forward? So we'll see what happens. Still a lot of time left to play and a lot of games left to play. So right now it's just you can't say one which way just because there's so many different variables in play, so much time left. And as Nick said, there's players that can definitely still step up and make something of themselves.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there on all your points. And I do want to ask, I guess, everybody's thinking about the trades as far as a minus for the Broncos. Obviously this season, if the Broncos, let's say they do end up losing the Titans and the Chiefs and going towards, I guess that'd be 1-6 at that point, they're probably going to be sellers then. As much as the PR side is saying, oh no, we're competing, we love Chris Harris and Emmanuel Sanders. That's you'd be silly and naive to think that they're not taking calls right now. But part of that is not only, you're getting obviously draft assets moving on from guys that you don't have in your future plans, but you're creating opportunities for young guys. And it's not only, the experience that matters there, whether they can sink or swim, but just, evaluating where you are as a team. I mean, you're going to lose Emmanuel Sanders, I'm 90% sure. Talking with Ben Albright, it sounds like Sanders is not demanding, but requesting potentially a different opportunity this season if it's presented. And so he's probably gone next season no matter what. Well, you don't know what you have in Juwan Winfrey. You don't really know what you have in Deshaun Hamilton, at least not as far as a larger market share. So if you move Sanders
or Fred Brown.
Exactly. So it's all about creating opportunities and kind of shifting the focus. But in that scope, obviously if they beat the Titans and they beat the Chiefs, this puts it on its head. Who knows what can happen in football? Football's crazy. But it's more about just kind of seeing where you're at and then giving yourself a better picture. So when you head into this offseason, considering how many question marks you're going to have, you just have a little bit better idea, and that hopefully allows you to make that much more of a better decision with the direction you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's just so many variables you have to consider. I mean, getting rid of becoming sellers and trying to collect more draft assets. Obviously, that's the route that the Broncos are going to go. They're going to obviously focus on improving this team directly, specifically through the draft and working the younger guys in. I mean, Nick, you're absolutely right. You hit the nail right on the head. So, but guys, that's gonna do it for us today. We're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you all once again for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast, and thanks to Nick Kendall for joining us, man. We really appreciate having you on with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, not a problem, man. Not a problem, man. You can follow all of us on Twitter by finding me at Sanderson MHH, for Erick at Erick Trickel, and for Nick at Nick Kendall MHH. Also, be sure to follow Mile High Huddle and set up your notifications for instant updates on your Denver Broncos. Each and every story published on the Huddle website is posted immediately on your Twitter handle, so you have instant access right at your fingertips. You can also like Mile High Huddle's Facebook page as well. We love and appreciate all of your guys' support, and if not for you all, we wouldn't have the opportunity to do what we do best. So until next time, Broncos country, stay safe and take care. Y'all have a great day. Thank you.